That's a good thing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to live with
One of us.
She came in the end of that. She was like, what is the end of this conversation?
There we go. All right.
Mark, can I share?
Yes. Yeah. Jean, I think I was going to say Jean. Thank you.
Yeah, I get here early enough, but I don't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fine. All right. Proverbs. We didn't finish chapter 1 yesterday, which is a sign that, well, it's just a sign that there's a lot going on in Proverbs. And we actually talked a lot about the wider mentality of being receptive to wisdom, and how our culture agitates and pushes and forms us against that. The idea of conforming yourself into wisdom that does not come from your own genius, but is very much passed on in the sense of honor your father and mother, including the wise counsel they give you, is something that's pushed back really hard in our culture and society, in the stories we watch and listen to. What are some examples you can think of, just to kind of get us underway? What opens us up to folly and not receiving wisdom and scoffing wisdom? What kind of, if you watch TV or movies or listen to the radio, what are some cliches that you see that poison your mind?
You are your own person.
You're your own person.
Stupid father.
The stupid father. Yes, yes, yes. The numbskull, Homer Simpson kind of numbskull dad. Quite a difference from maybe a Lord Cleaver or who was Bill Cosby. You know, that's sort of someone you look to for wisdom and guidance. No, he's an idiot. He's a buffoon. Father, yeah, that sort of contrast. No, I know what Father Knows Best is, and my 3 sons and all that. We've got a daughter now, so occasionally you watch a Disney movie, and like Little Mermaid, the foolish, mistaken father that needs to be rebelled against. I always think it's funny, the opening of Beauty and the Beast, when I was little, I thought it was strange that the whole town would make fun of a girl for liking to read books. I mean, who does that? No one, really. No one. I don't know of a lot of people who make fun of other people who are reading books. Maybe I just grew up in a different part of the world, but even in where I was from, that was just, there's not a whole town saying, she's so odd, she reads. I mean, I just thought that was unusual when I was like, I don't know, the first time I saw Beauty and the Beast, it came out when I was really little, and it wasn't until later that I saw it. I'm like, that's weird. These days, I rewatched it. The weirdest thing is Belle complaining about the townspeople. There's that baker baking bread. He's so boring. I'm like, he's making a living. It's just these sorts of things you see that people think of Disney as the good guy. They aren't, and they haven't been for many decades. Yeah, because they're always the family-friendly one compared to like a Nickelodeon or a DreamWorks or Paramount. The children's stuff they had was seen as edgy, right? A lot of fart jokes and stuff. Disney was seen as more family-friendly and our values, and that was Walt Disney's sort of thing. Warner Brothers was somewhat similar. And now both of them are going down this path where they're pushing very hard. And it started in the 80s and 90s. That's where you start seeing a lot of the big changes. Just as I've been watching stuff. You couldn't actually do Robin Hood, where the tax collector's the bad guy. The whole English. Anyway, the Anglo-Saxons versus the Norman yoke thing. Anyway, you don't need to go down that. I'm just saying, there's been a lot in our society that we see as, we'll just stick the kid in front of the tube and watch this and not think about how does this have them buck up against the wisdom of Proverbs, right, or the wisdom of Scriptures. You're forming an attitude in them that's not helpful. And what you can do is, if you're watching with the child, you need to break it down with them. And if not, you probably shouldn't be showing it to them unsupervised, is my thought. As a pastor, at least, I think that's wise. I think we've done a lot of the unsupervised television raises my children, and now we're seeing the result coming in as a whirlwind. And it's foolishness. And we're going to talk about wisdom and foolishness. In the earlier passage of Proverbs 1, we talked about, it's kind of like a lot of young men who were asking Solomon's son to join in with them so that they could steal from and prey upon the innocent. Remember that? It was all about watch the company you keep. Watch the company you keep. Don't hang out with guys who just plot evil against an innocent man to take a shortcut to wealth and well-being. Now we're going to see, and before that, the invitation was to be like a king. So do you want to be a king or do you want to be like this robber? And now we're going to see two women contrasted, Lady Wisdom and Lady Folly. And we're going to meet Lady Wisdom right now. And she's an interesting character. Would somebody read verses 20 through 33?
Wisdom calls aloud outside. She raises her voice in the open squares. She cries out in the chief concourses. At the openings of the gates in the city, she speaks her words. How long, you simple ones, will you love simplicity? For scorners delight in their scorning, and fools hate knowledge. Burn at my rebuke. Surely I will pour out my spirit on you. I will make my words known to you. Because I have called and you refused, I have stretched out my hand and no one regarded. Because you disdained all my counsel and would have none of my rebuke, I also will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your terror comes. When your terror comes like a storm, and your destruction comes like a whirlwind. When distress and anguish come upon you, then they will call on me, but I will not answer. They will seek me diligently, but they will not find me. Because they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord, they would have none of my counsel and despised my every rebuke. Therefore, they shall eat the fruit of their own way, and be filled to the full with their own fancies. And the turning away of the simple will slay them, and the complacency of fools will destroy them. But whoever listens to me will dwell safely, and will be secure without fear of evil.
There we go. All right. Here's the question. What woman will you choose? Hopefully you choose Lady Wisdom. She's interesting. She's very interesting. First off, where is she as Proverbs presents her? Where is she?
With the wise people at the gate of the city.
Wise people at the gate of the city. Did you have some other language, perhaps, in your translation to fill out the scene? Right? If you're going to do the opening scene, here we're going to introduce wisdom. What's the exposition? What's the setting like? The market. Busy.
Yeah.
So wisdom shouts in the street. She lifts her voice in the square, right? Public square, gates of the city. At the head of the noisy streets, she cries out. The hubbub. You could do even the hubbub. NASB added streets, but the noisiness, the hubbub. And at the entrance of the gates in the city, she utters her sayings. And they're, how long, O naive ones, will you love being simple-minded? We'll get there in a second. But what does that tell us? That description of where wisdom is and how she's behaving and what's around her in the environment. She's there if you pay attention. She's there. She isn't a secret. This is very interesting. Cults, like Gnostic cults in the ancient world, it was all about the secret wisdom. And the Bible presents wisdom as actually calling out in the public. If you open your ears and your eyes, we can see it every day. No one's hiding it away. In fact, if we're looking for or listening for it, we'll find her. But there's also a bunch of hubbub around her. We're busy, as are our neighbors. So why don't people listen to wisdom? Probably because you get distracted by the other hubbub. Does that make sense? So she's in the public spaces, but there's a lot of other things. There's some static. And she's trying to cry aloud to warn us.
It seems to me that she also emphasizes the inherent choice that people have
Right.
to listen to her or not. It's not, we so often today talk about being products of our environment.
Right.
Well, you still have choices.
You still have choices. Good, good. I like that. And this is what's being lost a lot in our discourse. And what's interesting is almost the picture, she's at the fork in the road at the entranceway of the city. And it's kind of, what path will you choose? That's what she's saying. It's like, will you listen to me or not? I don't care who you're, what kind of background you're from, who your parents were, what your, somebody, I forgot what the speaker was saying, everybody has to overcome an ism, or two, or three, or four. There's always isms you have to overcome. And the way you can overcome them is wisdom. Actually, that's not what they said, that's what I'm saying. But there I was talking about ism. There's isms that, obstacles in your life because of what you are, where you come from, that can make life a little bit more difficult for you than it would somewhere else. And you have to overcome it. And you can. And then, how do you get beyond that? And wisdom is calling you, listen to what I have to say. Wisdomism. Yeah.
But isn't wisdom recognized nowadays as being common sense?
Right. And
Well,
that's what's dangerous, because what is common now? Because we've lost all commonality. But it's not just getting ahead. If that makes sense too. Because I'm going to skip ahead here to get to that point. Why didn't people listen to her? They lacked something.
They're fools.
What did they lack? Look at the Bible. Let's see. Verse 29. What's their problem? They hate and
the fear of God.
they lack the fear of God, which is exactly what Solomon said. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Why does the fool scoff at the knowledge she has to offer? Because he does not fear God.
And he actually honors himself too much.
Yes, exactly.
He thinks he has all the answers. He
Right.
doesn't need God.
Right. And this is why it's so toxic in our environment now, where you look at your heart. What does your heart tell you? Look inward. No, look outward.
And have humility.
Look outwards. That is where you're going to find something you don't have yet. You'll always find that with me. I'm like anti-sentimental. Like, it's probably, I hope I don't ever go overboard, but there's just too much looking inward, too much following your heart. Because your heart's messed up, and there's nothing, that's not what I lack. You know? I need something that I lack, and wisdom offers it. How would you describe her? Yeah, how would you describe wisdom? And do you see that? But what would you point at, Brad, to say she's confrontational?
Well, that verse, how long you simple ones will you love simplicity?
Right, you simple-minded, bird brains. Right? Literally, when we were talking about the bird looking at the trap being laid before him, not even the fools are as smart as a bird. They're dumber than bird brains. Right? And so, how long, idiots? She's not flattery. Flattery is not wisdom's MO. In fact, we're going to find out in Proverbs, flattery is generally used to what? To deceive and to sugar over foolishness. To deceive you into doing something foolish, usually for someone else's benefit. And it's the flattery. Wisdom doesn't flatter. You can be kind, perhaps, but wisdom isn't necessarily, she doesn't have a soft touch here. She's not selling a vacuum cleaner, that's for sure, right? Yeah.
She makes me think of, was it Galadriel in the Lord of the Rings? Terrible,
Yeah,
in the
terrible.
true sense
Like
of the word.
terror, like fearful.
Yes.
Like, don't mess with this chick,
Right.
sort of.
There is a kindness or maybe a beneficence there,
Right.
but
you fear me.
Right, right.
Because
And she isn't like, oh, let me fix that for you. She's like the opposite of a helicopter parent, or they call them lawnmower parents, where she's clearing down the obstacles. No, if you screw up, what's she going to do? She's going to laugh at you. I'll scoff at you. You scoffed at me and didn't listen to me, and you're on your own, kid. I will mock. What?
She says, I will mock you when your terror comes.
I will mock you when your terror comes. She's a tough lady. I've had mothers, grandmothers, aunts like this, other women in my life, and that sometimes will do that. They're usually very nice and kind, but also sometimes just like, them's the breaks, kid. You know, you made your bed, you sit in it, but she kind of has this in spades. She is at the fork in the road. What fork will you choose? She's in a public square. We're choosing what way to go and how to live in society, with others, with the public. Remember, Proverbs is about rule. You must rule yourself, and my son, if you want to be a king, if you want to rule, right? She's the handmaiden you need to do that. If you want to be a wise ruler, you need wisdom. And listen to me, right? Otherwise, folly and pain for you and for everyone under you. Delight and scorn is a trademark of foolishness. Do you see that? Scoffers delight themselves in scoffing, and fools hate knowledge. This is very true. And I will just, again, this was anecdotal things, but I think young men in particular, scoffing comes very easily. Why are they so sarcastic? Right? I don't know if, at least when I grew up, in college, in high school, everything is about sarcasm. Everything is turned to sarcasm. And it's because you're coming to terms with your wit. You're able to turn something around and hit someone else, so to speak. Not with your fists, but with your words and with your mind. The problem is, there's an arrogance that can be there where you're closing yourself off to knowledge, and you're just using that to what? Be a fool to vaunt yourself. Right? That's the danger of sarcasm, and it will get you in a lot of trouble. And young men in particular, I think, this is a danger. Especially smarter young, well, maybe not smarter young men, but more cerebral young men. Always sarcasm all the time, and if your default mode is scoff, and what anybody else says, you're cruising for a bruising. You really are. And she's like, you can't scoff at me. You should not scoff at wisdom. Otherwise, verse 23, if you listen to me, if you listen to my reproof, even the hard things I have to tell you, I'll pour out my spirit on you, and I'll make my words known to you. You can see that even a bit with the Son. Jesus is the wisdom incarnate, and he pours out his spirit upon us. You're supposed to see that. And me making my works known to you. This is what's interesting. We also live in a time where true knowledge is seen as unattainable or not there. Relativism means we can't really communicate with one another really about truth, because truth ultimately is somewhat not fully knowable and not shareable. Have you thought about that? When we live in postmodernism where everything's relative, truth isn't something we can share. I have to have my truth, and then you have your truth, and that truth over there. And if that's the case, this is impossible, that we can know the truth. That's just really out there, outside of us and what we perceive, but actually just out there.
And that helps me avoid personal responsibility.
Because that helps me avoid personal responsibility.
And the Bible is full of truths.
Exactly, which is why, we live in a time where this is just totally out of the question. And you neglected all my counsel and did not want my reproof. 24. Because I called and you refused, I stretched out my hand and no one paid attention. Right? She's trying to warn you. She's trying to get you out of danger. And yet you neglected my counsel. And so, what's going to happen? Reality bites.
And
Right, and then I'll laugh at you. Lady Wisdom is not to be messed around with. If you scorn her advice, if you laugh at her good counsel, she will in turn mock and laugh at you when you experience the consequences for your actions. She is not a softie. She is not indulgent in that way. Them's the breaks, kid. Squirrel's smallest violin. Reality does bite. If you didn't listen to wisdom and sowed the wind, you will reap the whirlwind, and the hindsight won't help you with the predicament or fruit of your past decision, though it could help you avoid future mishaps. Right? Experience is the only way fools will learn, if at all, unless they keep doing the same thing over and over again. Some people are like that. But, we learn hard. We don't heed to wisdom sometimes in our lives, and then we do something, and then we're stuck in it with the consequences of it. I was foolish to go on a step ladder when I should have waited for a real ladder, and now my leg's broken, and it will always have a metal rod in it. It always will. Oh, unless they, want to take it out. There's the earthly consequence right there for foolishness. And I can learn about, I'm not going to do that in the future, but that doesn't fix this leg. Right? That's kind of the way it is with wisdom. It's a little harsh. It's a little bit of, this is the only life you have. Right? We don't believe in reincarnation. So, it's not like you get another go at this, and there's permanent things you have to deal with. And that's sometimes hard. We don't always escape our earthly consequences for our actions. And in fact, many Christians in America think otherwise out of sentimentalism or distorted, what I'll call antinomian, anti-law, anti-righteousness theology. We always American Christians are so indulgent and see God as so indulgent and therapeutic and a Santa Claus, and so everything else in this world has to be a manifestation of God being a giant Santa Claus, that when reality bites and it's hard and it doesn't go away, the consequences don't go away, even though you have a conversion experience or whatever, sometimes they're bitter and they're like, what gives? Because they're not taking Proverbs into account. Proverbs outlines that there can be really long, if you smoke a pack a day for 20 years, you can stop, good, but then that doesn't mean, you shouldn't be surprised if there's still some health consequences for you. Even if you get saved afterward, right? It's not going to erase that. That's a hard thing. But that's just kind of the way things are. It's a little bit more tough under the sun. And reality is kind of like that. And again, it's one of those things where sentimentalism does not survive well in the wisdom literature of the Bible. It's just hard truth, man. It's just hard sometimes. And that's what we want to do, is listen to wisdom so we don't have to be our own worst enemy and get in that pickle in the first place. And there's a degree to which our culture poorly prepares us to take the right or important things seriously enough. We take other things seriously instead. Right? What does our culture take seriously and get upset about that it doesn't need to get upset about?
A lot.
Feelings.
Yeah, a lot. Feelings. What's the one thing Lady Wisdom doesn't care about? Your feelings. This is one of those things where we're around poison. Lady Wisdom, I don't care how you feel. You jump off that ledge, you're going to break your leg. Right? I don't care if you want to. You should do it. And then when you do, I'm just going to laugh at you. Right? Well, that's mean. Right? That hurts my feelings. Too bad. What should we care about? Right? Wisdom. And the impatience with this is a bad thing. And we can't mock wisdom and then wish you had it. That's the other thing. The fool doubles down on his foolishness when he throws a pity party for himself, particularly if the condition or state he is in is a result of his foolishness. Again, hard thing, hard pill to swallow. But it's like you're doubling down. If you're saying, woe is me, why am I so poor? And you took out all this debt, and you got addicted to things, and you lost your job over and over again, you made all these foolish choices over and over, there's only so much sympathy that can be generated for that situation, where you are your own worst enemy, and you won't do anything about it. Again, do you want to talk about something unpopular? We want an unlimited gravy train. We want there always to be that trampoline at the bottom of the thing, right? Of the tightrope, so to speak. And we don't want our actions to have consequences. Can I put it that way? We don't want our actions to have consequences. At least our bad actions, we don't want bad consequences. Very human. But we get upset. We get insulted, aggravated. We try to sue. We push back really hard when our bad actions result in bad consequences. I have respect for those that they say, you know what, if I do this, I'm going to lose my job. I knew I signed on the dotted line and that was what would occur, but I'm going to do it. And I'm not going to play a martyr. Recently, a Christian college wasn't that recently now, but they had a professor who decided to do this kind of universalistic thing where she was going to do Ramadan and dress like a Muslim, and she's kind of this, we're all God's people, God of Abraham. This happened at a college, and she eventually lost her job because it was a Christian college. Right? You can't carry on that way. And then she tried to play the victim. And a lot of people believed her because we live in a foolish age. She was the victim. And like, you are at a Christian college, you signed a statement of faith, and you are hitting against the culture of that and the actual creed itself. And what she was saying, I won't go into all the details, but she was basically like, you should not be surprised that you lost your job. And she was throwing a pity party, and people were encouraging her, and they were all fools. You lost your job because you did a thing that would lose you your job.
What happened to her?
I don't know. But I think she's probably working in another school. But it's fascinating. Wisdom doesn't take that nonsense. Boethius, when he wrote the Consolation Philosophy, he throws a pity party for himself because he's in jail. It's not actually anything he did. He's being done wrong. But Lady Wisdom comes and she chases away the muses as he's writing his pity party song. He's like, don't do this. Don't do this. And it helps us because it helps us stay clear-headed and circumspect. What do I mean by circumspect? We don't use that word very often, but I think I want to use this because we need to be, wisdom invites us to be circumspect. Prudent, what does that mean?
You're being cautious about you're being deliberate and intentional with your actions.
Yeah. Circumspect means spectator, to look. Circum, to look around. Look around before you take a step. Survey the whole scenario. That's actually prudence, the definition of is taking within the whole reality thing. It doesn't always mean caution. Sometimes the prudent thing is to be bold, kind of crazy, right? Winston Churchill, we're going to go to war with Nazi Germany. Why? Because there's no other choice. These people are crazy. And you've got to fight. And that was considered bold, stupid, risky. It was prudent. Prudent, and that's why I want to see too, circumspect. If you see the lay of the land, it doesn't always invite you to inaction. Sometimes you need to act. And that's what's interesting too about wisdom that we've lost. Wisdom doesn't mean just being zen and detached from the world. It means you act when you need to act, you don't act when you don't need to act, and you don't act in foolish ways. It's guidance, right? And we needed that. What else do you see here from Lady Wisdom?
Kind of patience. I mean, you will listen to me. It's not going to be right away, but she knows.
Yeah, I'll be right in the end.
Yeah.
Just that confidence thing. The other thing too, there's, like I said before, if you don't listen to her at the time you need to listen to her, you can't do anything about it, right? I should have listened to her before I stepped on the ladder. No, she's just like, okay, idiot, that sort of thing. And again, what is this saying to a young man? Listen to me when you need to listen to me. Listen to me right away. Listen to me while I can be found. Listen to me while my counsel is relevant.
Yeah, it's like think before you act.
Well, even then, it's like, how do I put this?
Listen to me first.
Listen to me first. Don't say, oh, you were right later on. Listen to me first, Dumbo. It's just, it's this important thing that we need to listen to wisdom before we make a foolish act.
Some people are so hard-headed.
Yes.
They know in their brains that it's not a good thing to do, but they will do it anyway because they want to experience it firsthand.
Yes.
Or it's pride.
It's pride or perverse curiosity. There's also this, that's actually how folly, we're going to see Lady Folly. There's another lady. She's an adulterous woman. She tempts you. Come, my husband's away. And she's just this terrible lady, but she tempts us with our curiosity. Just this forbidden fruit sort of thing that we want, even though we know it's wrong. And we'll get to that too, but you start seeing that wisdom isn't morally neutral. I've been saying this over and over again. We live in a time where we think, it's just like punching numbers in a computer. That's not the case at all. There's a moral element to wisdom, because it's about the fear of the Lord.
And that's what we're missing.
That's what we're missing.
Period. I mean, even like a lot of the new churches that grow very rapidly with lots and lots of young people, they have this incredibly casual way, even of addressing God in their prayers, that actually kind of makes me cringe.
Right.
And then this sort of
You aren't learning the fear of the Lord. Yeah, hey, Daddy God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, no, that's not the fear of the Lord.
That's not the fear of the Lord, right? And that is important. And actually, this is why the Psalms are helpful. The Psalms integrate with Proverbs, because if we're going to learn the fear of the Lord, what teaches about the fear of the Lord, if not the Psalms? The whole Bible does, but I think about, we just talked about how great God is, how he rules and is highly lifted up. That is the cornerstone. It forms us and shapes our heart so that we would be receptive unto wisdom. And that's the really, why do we do all that? It does open you up to wisdom. I'm trying to think what else. Yeah.
When you did the first session, unfortunately we missed it, did you discuss the word proverb?
We talked about why proverbs are proverbs. We didn't say what a proverb is. Go for it.
Well, I just think it's such an important issue because of the fact that these sayings and this wisdom and all of this information is called proverb. Obviously the word verb is all about action.
Right. What do you do?
What you do.
Right.
And then of course pro is that comes before that action. So
right. The word or the thing before you do the action.
Think before you do. Right?
Think before you do. The other thing we talked about is it's memorized.
Yes.
It's so easy to memorize. And this is the voice of wisdom. When we think about why are there proverbs, it's so you can hear her.
Yeah, I mean,
you can hear.
Wisdom begins with this notion of taking a pause
Yes.
before you act.
Right.
And that's what I'm hearing from Lady Wisdom is, whatever figure you want me to be, your mother, or your grandmother,
right.
or whatever, but the whole deal here is just wait.
Right.
Listen.
Just wait. Listen.
Be still.
Well, what we're going to see, why this metaphor? I want to step back. Why this metaphor? Why is a young son being told about Lady Wisdom? Why is a young son being told about Lady Wisdom?
To help him God as he ages.
A couple things. Pursuing wisdom is like pursuing or courting a bride. Why do I say that? Men in particular, those of you who are married, what does it take to pursue and bride.
It's a lot of money.
Commitment.
How do I do?
I do funerals for free. That's just sacrifice,
Commitment.
commitment. All the women are saying things.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean
Seriousness. What did you say?
Intention.
That's actually one of the things that came to the forefront of my mind. I was very intentional. Like, how do I get this to happen? I was thinking, how do I get that girl, Mary Margaret Burke, how do I get her to marry me, to say yes when I ask her to marry me? How do I get there? What do I need to be doing? What things do we need to be talking about? What sort of situation should we be in? What does she like to do? What's important to her? Intention, attention. That's just what you need for wisdom. You have to seek her out. You have to be attentive to her. But
You also have to have respect.
you have to have respect for her. She will suffer no fools, this woman. And isn't that interesting? Because you don't want to blow it. Don't blow it with this woman. And what that is, that translates easily to courtship, but also it's about wisdom too. I think that's very interesting. Because young men are very interested in somehow securing a mate. Right? It happens very naturally. Young men, I want a girlfriend. And then I want a wife.
That's a good thing if you've got a
That's a good thing.
God-fearing
And
heart.
that's actually what Proverbs is saying. It is a good thing. You need to choose the right woman.
But not so if you just want it because you want it.
Not just because you want it, But isn't it ingenious how Proverbs says wisdom is like a lady and you need to treat her like one? Treat her like a lady. That's always a piece of courtship advice, isn't it? Treat her like a lady. Treat her with respect. Value her. Value what she says. Pay attention to what she says. Men. No, exactly.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing for all of them.
We can.
See what's so funny?
I don't understand. Like, for us, it's like multiple tabs at once. We don't do like just one at a time. Right.
You know, to Lori's point about the
Lori does
modern
not have a
churches.
point.
No, not that point. I'm going back to one of the ones she made earlier. The whole thing about the modern churches and the way they speak to God. The reverence is missing.
Right.
The respect.
So
you treat it more
And
casually.
it's fascinating to me that when I say the fear of the Lord to kids raised in these environments, they try to push me hard to massage it to redefine fear of the Lord. They want me to get rid of that very concept. They want it far from their minds. I don't want to be afraid of God. How dare you?
Because that's why we say.
The chariots of wrath, this deep thunder clouds form. Hello, come on, which is it? And it's like, well, they get reverence. I'm like, okay, but it's still the same thing where you respect him.
You're a male or you're a lady.
Oh,
Don't be afraid.
Right? And same thing, Lady Wisdom. You can say, well, she's just a buddy. She doesn't act like one. This is quite a woman, and she's respected, and her advice needs to be heeded and feared. But yeah, you're talking about the fear of the Lord, and I don't want to get off on the rabbit trail, but there's just the simple fact that the church has voluntarily made herself weaker, with no government oppression or persecution at all. She has voluntarily made herself weaker. Because she refuses to teach the fear of the Lord, she refuses to use her own vocabulary, and she's just trying to appeal to worldly men.
Right.
And they keep changing the vocabulary to fit a certain demographic because they want butts and seats, and it's like a drug. That's not to Proverbs, I'm just saying.
Rabbit trail.
That's my rabbit trail. Why? But first of all, pursuing wisdom is like courting a bride and pursuing a woman. If you get married, you want a wise wife. Lori said, if you're a young man, it's a good likelihood you're going to get married. Not always, but it's a good likelihood, especially if you're in a royal family. That's what you kind of want to happen. And so, what kind of woman are you going to marry? It's very interesting. This is, what is it, a wilting violet? Is that what it's called? Wilting, what? Shrinking violet, thank you. Lady Wisdom's not one of those. She's not silly. She's not... there are certain cultures hold up ideals of womanhood that are very foolish. It depends on where you are. And there are foolish women, right? And Solomon's saying, don't marry one of those. I don't want to read too much into it, but you should not be surprised. If you've married a wise wife, she will hurt your feelings on occasion. She'll hurt your sensibilities. She won't flatter you all the time. Because she actually wants what's best for you and for your household, for your family together. A woman that's willing to do that to God, and you need to heed her. That's how Proverbs culminates in Proverbs 31. When the wise man has married a wise wife, and the prosperity and true happiness that results from that union.
It's more precious than gold.
It's more precious than gold, finer than rubies. And she's able to be prosperous. She makes you prosperous. You sit in the gate in a position of honor and rule. And that's what we're headed towards. She is like this. She listens to wisdom. She is wise. And the figure of the woman is very important for the wisdom literature. There's a reason it culminates with a love poem. We're headed to Song of Solomon. There's a reason there's a trilogy of Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Solomon. The deepest wisdom is found in the love poem. Because you start getting the deep mystery of the union. And God, in His wisdom, made that union that reveals tremendous mysteries. We'll get there when we get there. But why does Solomon and the wisdom literature keep talking about men and women and getting married and the process leading up to getting married? And it's very interesting because pursuing wisdom is like pursuing or courting a bride. And then how do we look for wisdom day by day? Proverbs, the fact that they're so short and memorable and applicable, are helpful in that endeavor. And for those called to marriage, how do we find a wise spouse? What are we looking for and why? What are we looking for in a wise spouse?
Fear of the Lord.
Fear of the Lord. That's like absolutely fundamental. If when I had friends who would date, right, out with girls, and if the religious life of the girl was wishy-washy, they didn't get an okay from me, if that makes sense. And thankfully, most of my close friends, they have happy marriages to godly women. But I've seen it when the girl goes way off the tracks, and it's just disaster. Even if the man's a good man, a lot of pain results, a lot of misery, and it's unfortunately it's folly that you were blinded by something else, so that you would ignore the fear of the Lord quotient with somebody. What else? I mean, some of you have kids. What do you tell them? Respect. Talking about what are you looking for in, especially if you have a son, what are you looking for in a wife?
For me, Christian.
So fear the Lord, Christian woman, what else? According to this, if Lady Wisdom is a desirable lady, wise, she's got some wisdom, and she advises, yeah.
There's a proverb that says, better to live on the side of your roof than with a quarrelsome.
Yeah, she's not quarrelsome, though. She's kind of a take it or leave it lady. She's not going to keep quarreling over it.
You leave home to work. One of the best things to have as an anchor in your life is to know that your children are safe
That too, and also there's tough love too. If you have to be the bad guy all the time, as the husband, as the dad, that's not going to be a very functional. You're the bad guy, and she's always the good guy. She's always the indulgent one. And apparently, Lady Wisdom can be tough love, and that is good to have in a wife as well.
But she also, Lady Wisdom also makes a promise that
if you listen to me, good, yeah, good prosperity. All right, I just wanted to go into that. Next time, we'll keep talking about the blessings that wisdom has in store for those who listen to her and espouse themselves, court her. And we'll go through that. That's chapters 2 and 3, I believe. Yeah, and then we hear the Father's instruction. The structure of Proverbs is just really interesting. All right, any other thoughts or questions? Sorry that meandered a bit. We just kind of, this figure of Lady Wisdom, she actually shows up in a lot of Christian literature. The idea of Lady Wisdom became really foundational to Christian discourse and thinking because it's biblical. And you'll find all sorts of authors and smart people who are Christians who will have Lady Wisdom show up. But this is where they get it from. All right, let's pray. Father, we thank you for wisdom. We ask that you would give it to us. We ask that we would heed what she has to say when we need to heed it. We pray that you would give us the perseverance to endure any times we don't heed her as we deal with earthly consequences. But also, may we be eager to listen to what she has to say to avoid foolishness and folly. In Christ's name, amen.